Our next topic is, what is student success anyway? What every dean's office needs, general semantics. Margaret Cassidy from Delphi. Welcome. We're looking forward to your answer to the question.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm watching everybody come up here and stand in the dark and try to see the paper and not have that stripe of light. Anyway, let's see. This is a good spot for everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. When university administrators become aware of something that is wrong or that could be better, or something they want to address, they like to name it in a catchy way. What should we call this thing? From there, you start to see that name, that phrase popping up all around you. It starts appearing on agendas for faculty and committee meetings. There are working groups and task forces, brown bag lunches, sometimes a new associate provost for that thing that they've named. And everyone starts talking about what to do about this problem or issue that has now been given a name. There are a lot of terms and phrases like this that have been getting me thinking lately. I don't know how much this extends beyond my institution, but I have a feeling it's more universal. Mission critical was very popular last year. Value added is hot this year. One term I just heard for the first time, it might not be new, but I just heard it for the first time last week, which people use completely unironically, intrusive advisements. Have you heard of this yet? Anyway, we can talk about that another time. Intrusive advisement as a good thing we do for students. But we don't use that in student-facing conversations, right? But that's another term. So the one I'm going to focus on today, though, is the ubiquitous student success. Now, I think it's fair to say that all of us who work in higher education want students to succeed. How in the world could you be against student success? But the term student success and its recent dominance in higher education discourse really beg for some analysis from a general semantics perspective. I think it's a great example of a term that seems so reasonable, so easy for everyone to get behind, but that is more complicated when we take a closer look at the term and the conversations and behaviors that have sprung out of the use of that term. I think that typically when higher education administrators talk about student success, they're talking about progress toward completion of a degree. And let me just emphasize that, of course, I agree that this is essentially important. Of course, we should be helping students through a process that results in them earning a degree within a reasonable time frame. In recent years, a combination of unacceptably low graduation rates, declining enrollments and retention rates, and increasing public anger over the obscene cost of higher education and public doubts about whether college is really worth it have pushed university administrators to look more carefully at what they do and how they do it. This pressure has coincided with the development of a variety of data analytics tools that can make all kinds of predictions about student academic performance and progress, and that can sort students' data by a number of different categories. For example, by race, gender, income, and their status as first-generation college goers. Colleges and universities spend hundreds of thousands of dollars every year now on predictive analytics tools, and there is evidence that the investment pays off for many schools in higher retention and graduation rates. And as great as it is for universities to be financially stable and for students to graduate, we should look more closely at some of the implications of using these tools and the information they push out to us in the name of improving student success. For example, if you go to the website of a company that I'm sure some of you know called EAB, you will see that they offer what they call solutions in a number of categories of higher education problems. Student success is one category of problem for which EAB offers solutions. Tableau is another data analytics company that offers what they call solutions to educational and other industries. I'm sure there are many more, but these two are particularly popular in higher education right now, and my examples will be coming from my experiences with a combination of these two companies' solutions. EAB's Navigate advising program is a program that makes predictions about how likely a student is to make successful progress toward their intended degree. It uses a variety of data points to make these predictions. For example, some courses are coded as success marker courses. If you know that students who get less than a C in a particular introductory course tend to drop out, you can have EAB flag students who do not meet that success marker, and then you can intervene in some way. Some other criteria that will get a student flagged are a GPA below a certain threshold, or the number of D and F grades they have received. If you are an academic advisor or a professor, each of your advisees or students is designated by EAB as low, moderate, or high, based on the degree of risk of not graduating that EAB has assigned to them. These tools can be a helpful part of the advising process. One of my concerns, however, is that in a time when most universities are slashing budgets everywhere they can, every way they can, advisors are increasingly pressed to spend less time or no time with students and rely on these abstractions and predictions based on these abstractions to advise students. There's a real risk here of self-fulfilling prophecies. For example, a student called high risk, who I don't know personally, might be someone I will steer toward less demanding courses, or who we might try to funnel into a different major than the one the student has chosen. There is some evidence that these predictions do sometimes lead advisors to reinforce racial, gender, and other stereotypes about who belongs in what academic programs and who is or is not capable of high academic achievement. Students with certain risk factors tend to have more dings on their records that may or may not be evidence that they can't do the program they have set out to do. But if we don't know them personally, how would we know if EAB's predictions represent them accurately? Out of curiosity, I compared EAB's abstraction of my advisees against my personal experience with these students, and I would say that I agree with EAB's classification of them as high, moderate, or low risk about half of the time. In some cases, students are classified as low risk when I know for sure that they are in real danger of not graduating. In other cases, students are classified as high risk when I find them to be extremely engaged, conscientious, motivated, and dare I say, successful. One case in particular also demonstrates the value of the general semantics practice of indexing. I have a student, let's call him Bob, who is flagged in EAB as high risk because his transcript has enough D's and F's to trigger EAB's warning system. What is less obvious from EAB's analysis is that these grades were all earned in a single semester in his freshman year. He is now a senior. This is a great example of a capable, motivated student who had a really bad semester because of circumstances that were specific to that semester. He was fine before that, and he's been fine since then. In general semantics terms, Bob fall 2020 is not Bob spring 2021, is not Bob this semester, etc. I would actually describe him as very successful. He went through something very difficult and came out the other side, and he has moved on and is thriving. So EAB's abstractions do help us manage large groups of students and make predictions about them, but they may or may not tell us anything accurate about any particular student. I'm preaching to the choir here, I know, but it makes me feel better. It's potentially useful information, but it's also potentially irrelevant. I have to take a quick aside here and say that I tried to express this sentiment in a meeting last month with people who are very committed to the use of these tools, and it did not go very well at all. Anyway, when these tools capture something true about a particular student, they don't tell us why it's true. A low grade in the success marker class or a bunch of D grades leaves out all the details of how or why that happened. So we still have no idea what interventions might be effective and what would be useless. For example, I have a student on academic probation who has a medical condition that puts her in the hospital a lot. She does not need any kind of academic help. Another student has no trouble understanding course content, but has a learning disability that affects his ability to plan and complete his work. He might benefit from some kind of support, but not subject area tutoring. And then there's an advisee of mine who is flagged as high risk because of his status as a transfer student and a veteran, but his real problem is that he just cannot do statistics. For him, a math tutor might be just the thing he needs. All of these people got flagged by EAB, but at the level of abstraction of the flag, there's too much information left out to help us think about what to do about it. For all the promises of solutions offered by predictive analytics companies, as far as I can tell, they are mostly just pointing out potential problems in a terribly overgeneralized way. I think it's also worth looking carefully at the categories these predictive analytics programs do and do not offer as ways of sorting students and making predictions about them. For example, I believe it's in Tableau that I can sort students by gender, race, major, year in school, and whether they are eligible for college work study employment. I can separate out the first generation college goers or the transfer students. I can search for student athletes, and I can even search for some specific athletic teams, but not all teams are individually searchable. I never got around to looking at which ones are or are not. I can search for students who don't do well in success marker classes. So those are some of the ways I can sort students. What are some of the ways I can't sort them? I can't sort by whether they're right or left-handed, if they know how to make French toast, if they speak multiple languages. I can't sort by hair color, favorite food, or how much TV they watch. And of course, you might ask, why would I want to? That's fair. But there are some things I think might be useful to include in EAB, but I don't get to decide what gets included, right? Maybe how many hours they work off campus, or whether they're commuter students who take care of younger siblings in the afternoons and evenings. Maybe the number of times, if any, that they meet with their advisor every semester. Maybe their participation in student clubs or performing arts organizations. Maybe something about what they hope to accomplish while they are with us. It's so important to think, I think, about whose definitions of student success underlie these programs and other student success initiatives and practices. For example, EAB does not disclose much information to students. Students do not know that they are flagged as high, moderate, or low risk unless an advisor tells them. I see Mike shaking his head. Or unless they happen to see your computer screen and find out that way. They don't know that some courses are coded as success markers and that their grades in these courses might trigger some kind of warning or other action or intervention. The criteria for success and the warning triggers for potential failure do not seem to take into account students' goals or student definitions of success. And I think all of this begs the question of who exactly is doing the student successing in this environment. Of course, it is the students who take the tests and write the papers, hopefully, and earn the credits. But in some ways, this thing called student success is done by faculty and administrators, and students are more the game pieces that we are trying to move along the board in a timely way, all the while employing strategies based on what EAB or other analytics tell us to do. And there's a very important and influential metaphor at play here that I haven't mentioned yet, the concept of the dashboard. In EAB, the advisor has what's called a population health dashboard, from which we can generate what are called predictive profiles. I have access to several dashboards as a professor, advisor, and department chair. The dashboard metaphor is interesting to me. Administrators and faculty are the drivers with the dashboards. Students don't have a dashboard. Where are they in this metaphor? What are they? In some ways, I think the dominant definition of student success is more about the success and continued existence of educational institutions and only indirectly about the success of individual students and what success means to them. I recently had the pleasure, and I'm not speaking satirically here, it was actually a really nice conversation. I recently had the pleasure of speaking with the chair of the board of trustees at my university, who is an alum of the university. He talked about the transformative experience that he had as an undergraduate student, the one thing that really launched the career that he absolutely loves. In his case, it was an internship program for minority students. We talked about what this looks like for other students. Very often, as I'm sure you all know, and you probably have your own stories of your own experiences, students' transformative college experience is a professor they loved, a leadership opportunity that they took, an internship, a semester abroad, a service project. As widely varied as these experiences are, what is the common thread? Actually, there are two. One is the research that suggests that these types of experiences have the greatest positive impact on long-term life outcomes after graduation. You might have seen an article in the Chronicle just this week that cites this research. The other common thread is that none of these experiences are in the student success predictive analytics or the way they invite us to talk and think about student success. They can't all be captured by EAB or Tableau, although some of them could be. But we could, regardless, shift our language about student success and expand or just plain change the parameters of the discussion. As you all know so well, Neil Postman told us, our language structures the very way we see and any significant change in our ways of talking can lead to a change in a point of view. I think it's time for leaders in higher education to think about how they are framing the conversation at their institutions, and that they are framing the conversation in particular ways, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and then to consider how they might expand or reshape the conversation on their campus.